justice sociale, la méritocratie et les chances égales et omniprésentes dans les précédents budgets présentés par l'honorable Pravin Jagnat lui-même ainsi que son gouvernement. Aujourd'hui, en tant que Premier ministre, ces valeurs clés constituent la ligne conductrice de toute action gouvernementale. Monsieur le Président, on vient d'écouter le discours de l'honorable leader de l'opposition. En effet, hier, j'ai parcouru un article dans l'hebdomadaire Week-end. En effet, c'était son entrevue. Et il traite plusieurs sujets, évidemment sur le budget. Et à la fin de compte, il se dit confus. Je suis très confus, c'est ce qu'il dit. Et à l'entendre aujourd'hui dans cette chambre, ce n'est pas seulement qu'il est confus, moi je l'ai vu abasourdi. Tel est l'effet du budget. The honorable leader of opposition has been Minister of Finance, Minister of Industry, Minister of Tourism in the past. And he knows pretty well that Mauritius is an open economy, even more so an insular economy, operating in a highly dynamic, unpredictable, and competitive international environment. As such, we are directly subjected to the vagaries of international conjunctures and major influences that we can only inherit and contend with. Mr. Speaker, sir, what are the main pillars of our economy? Tourism, manufacturing, financial services, sugar, and a few more. And our main imports, petroleum, food, raw materials used in manufacturing, construction, amongst many others. Therefore, how can he, the honorable leader of opposition, understate the impact of international factors on our economy? How can he ignore the situation in our source markets and in our export markets? Last year, he and many other members on the other side of the House referred extensively and spoke lengthily about one particular country. And which country? Sri Lanka. I can say that at that time they were obsessed with that reference and predicted the same fate for Mauritius. A year later, have these predictions materialized, Mr. Speaker, sir? Mais cette réaction, ce réflexe, ne me surprend pas. Le leader de l'opposition estime que le budget n'adresse pas ce qu'il qualifie de malaise mauricien. Mais je me pose la question, c'est quoi ce malaise mauricien? Y en a-t-il vraiment une? Ou est-ce tout simplement l'expression rébarbative de l'éternelle insatisfaction de l'opposition? It is a fact that the world economy has been in choppy waters with COVID-19 pandemic. And this dire economic situation is further exacerbated by the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. In 2020, most economies were locked down due to prevailing sanitary conditions, entailing lower demand on one hand and a heavily disrupted supply chain on the other. Hence, real world GDP in 2020 decelerated by 3.2% according to the World Bank. In 2021, as businesses and individuals were gradually settling into the new normal worldwide, the global real GDP figure reached 5.9%. It is in that particular context of relative normalization that in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. As a consequence, the cost of raw materials as well as intermediate materials, such as crude oil, fertilizers, wheat, skyrocketed, thereby weighing heavily on global economic prospects. Meanwhile, central banks around the world, with the principal aim of reining in inflationary pressures, tightened monetary policy, which consequently curbed economic growth. To an extent, that World Bank prospects indicates that the global economy is perilously close to falling into recession. The World Bank has reviewed its forecast for GDP growth for 2023 downwards from 3% to 1.7%. In the midst of this gloom, the sub-Saharan Africa region is expected to be resilient with a real GDP growth forecast of 3.6% and 3.9% for 2023 and 2024, a forecast which is higher than the global average. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is therefore up to each country to take its destiny in its own hands. And it is up to each leader to dare to take bold actions and steer the economy in the right direction. Mauritius, for its part, has seen a swift turnaround in its economic situation from its GDP at market prices of minus 14.6% in 2020 to an estimated 8.7% GDP growth rate in 2022 on a calendar year basis. Our core economic activities, tourism, manufacturing and exports, agriculture, and financial services have all bounced back last year, that is 2022. Exports have reached 102 billion in 2022, an increase of 24% year on year. Tourist arrivals were shy of the 1 million figure, from about 1/12 of this figure only a year later. Mr. Speaker, sir, rampant inflation has become an evil over the past year, undermining economic recovery, hampering social stability, leaving economists desperately searching for solutions. Record rates of inflation have been observed internationally, as opposed to what the Honourable Leader of Opposition makes us think, that this phenomenon is unique to Mauritius only. The US saw an annual inflation rate of 8%, while the UK witnessed a 41-year high inflation rate of 11% in October last year. According to Statistics Mauritius, headline inflation rate in January 2023 worked out to 11.8%, steadily normalizing to 8.3% in April this year. Consequently, the Bank of Mauritius has proactively updated its monetary policy framework. The aim is to adapt its inflation targeting objective with a target rate ranging between 2 to 5%, while aiming to achieve 3.5% over the medium term. As per the country's debt metrics, it is estimated that public sector net debt as of June 2023 stood at around 420 billion rupees, representing 72.9% of GDP, and of which 20% is external debt. Only 20%, Mr. Speaker, sir. The debt service ratio for fiscal year 2022-2023 was 7.7%, though including an exceptional debt servicing, without which the ratio would have stood at 3.1%, and which is expected to increase mildly to 3.6% on a comparable basis for fiscal year 2023-2024. To this effect, it is also important to highlight that the country holds foreign exchange reserves amounting to the equivalent of 291 million rupees, hence capable of covering imports for 9.8 months. Let me come back, Mr. Speaker, sir, to that never-ending debate on rising public debt. These global trends are evident in both large, advanced, and emerging market economies. Japan is at its highest debt GDP ratio at 262%, Singapore, 160%, USA, 129%. The House of Representatives has approved a deal last week to allow the US to borrow more money days before it may start defaulting on its debt. Banging on about debt GDP ratios and ignoring everything else within an economy may often be a recipe for failure. Too often, bogus economic debates focus on the fiscal deficit, as if balancing the budget was a standard or hallmark of sound economic management. But no, Mr. Speaker, sir. The obsession with cutting the deficit and paying down the debt may more than often hamper proper recovery. This does not mean that we are being profligate. But debt reduction cannot be an obsession that overrides economic policy. Given new economic dynamics, all fiscal doctrines may well need to be revisited, to be readapted. But as a responsible, caring government, we will never knowingly risk the future of our children and future generations. On the contrary, we are laying the grounds for the legacy that will live long after us. More economic indicators are now in green, flashing like a beacon of hope, following the rough patch endured in 2020 and 2021. We now must build on these promising grounds to further the economy, increase prosperity for its people, and dare to lay the grounds for the legacy that we are going to leave for the future generation. It is with this aim and objective that this budget speech addresses the crux of the matters on 1, strengthening the foundations of our economy, 2, continuing the transformation of Mauritius into a sustainable economy, 3, building the future we deserve, and 4, supporting families and vulnerable groups. It is on these foundations that government will be building a stronger economy and a fairer society, providing greater protection in the hard times of economic uncertainty, and driving it all a renewed determination for a defining decade ahead. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me address some budget measures. For long, experts and professionals have spoken about distortions in our personal taxation system. This government has now taken the bold measure to move to a progressive system of personal taxation. This in itself is testament to the extent that this government has gone to restore social justice and equity in the country since 2014. With this new progressive system, the highest salaried employees will effectively compensate for the lowest salaried employees. Fairness for the low-income employees is even more evident now that people earning up to a monthly income of 30,000 rupees per month will not be subject to income tax. Even more so, with the CSG allowances in place, these people now receive contributions from the authorities, the main aim of improving the purchasing power of those who are at the bottom of the social ladder. This measure is highly commendable, and Mauritius is, if not the only, one of the fewest countries where government is giving back to its people. The government is also coming up with revenu minimum guarantee of 15,000 rupees monthly, which means that no full-time employee should be getting total income of less than 15,000 rupees monthly. Mr. Speaker, so when we compare a few years back only, the cleaners, those women cleaners were getting only 1,500 rupees per month. 15,000 today. Even the honorable leader of opposition is laughing, smiling. It's good to smile at good measures. Moreover, reducing the burden of the cost of living has been at the very core of this government. To this end, it is highly welcoming to see that price of fuel from 74 rupees 10 cent liter to 69 rupees liter, given its weight in the basket of goods and services, subsidies amounting to 4.7 billion rupees on staples and LPG will also be provided. Monsieur le Président, le leader de l'opposition estime que la baisse de 5 rupees 10 par litre d'essence est ridicule d'après lui, malgré la tendance baissière sur le plan mondial. Mais ce qu'il ne nous dit pas est que quand le prix par baril était à la hausse, la STC n'a pas répercuté la totalité de l'augmentation sur les consommateurs, ce qui fait que le Price Stabilization Account de la STC est déficitaire. Qui est plus, l'OPEP, l'Organisation des pays exportateurs de pétrole, annonce une réduction de la production de pétrole de plus d'1 million de barils par jour, soit 1% de la consommation mondiale. Parallèlement, la demande mondiale va augmenter cette année en raison du redémarrage de la Chine, premier acheteur au monde. Plus de demandes, moins d'offres, cela signifie fatalement la hausse des prix. Autre point de déception du leader de l'opposition, l'augmentation de la pension de vieillesse qui ne passe pas à 13 500 roupies. Encore une fois, Monsieur le Président, cette déception, il aurait dû l'exprimer lorsque nos aînés touchaient que 3 623 roupies en 2014. Tripler presque cette somme en 9 ans n'est quand même pas négligeable. Toutefois, je comprends la déception de l'opposition. Le leader de l'opposition ayant occupé le portefeuille des finances sous le régime Parti-Travail SPMSD n'avait peut-être lui-même jamais rêvé oser ce pari. In our case, Mr. Speaker, sir, this government is ensuring that household incomes are beefed up, and on the other, it is ensuring that the cost of living remains in check, ensuring that families are able to live, not only survive. The budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, is not about winners and losers. Rather, it is a goal-setting exercise based on our values and our unwavering commitment. Government cannot just be about scoring political points or doing what is politically convenient or expedient, contrary to what members of the other side of the House may tend to believe. We are compelled by our duty as government to do what is right for the country and our people and build a fairer, more inclusive and even more equitable society, even when tough calls have to be made. Monsieur le Président, le maintien du prix du pain maison, de la bobonne à gaz, du riz et de la farine va dans cette direction. Qui plus est, des subventions sont préservées pour des produits comme le lait en poudre, les grains secs et l'huile cosmétique. La suppression de la TVA sur 15 produits viendra aussi soulager les consommateurs. Et comment oublier l'allocation de 1 000 roupies accordée aux salariés qui touchent moins de 50 000 roupies mensuellement, payable à partir de juillet l'année dernière. Le présent budget prévoit une child allowance de 2 000 roupies à 48 000 enfants âgés de 3 ans ou moins. Donc, Monsieur le Président, on a osé et on a déployé les moyens pour protéger ceux qui méritent ce soutien. Imaginez-vous la détresse des familles dont un enfant est atteint d'un cancer et qui galèrent à trouver les fonds pour le traitement. Ne connaît-on pas tous un proche ou un ami qui a perdu la bataille contre le cancer? Cette provision vient soulager le fardeau financier des familles qui sont contraintes à entamer toutes sortes de démarches pour soigner leurs enfants. Elles vont sûrement trouver dans cette mesure une lueur d'espoir. Et pour nous, c'était notre devoir de faire preuve de compassion. Mr. Speaker, sir, as we focus on propelling the country to new heights, we can draw confidence and strength from sectors that make our pride. I am pleased to elaborate on one such sector under my purview that showed and keeps on shining, that is the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector comprises 232 export-oriented enterprises, EOEs, 309 non-export-oriented enterprises, non-EOEs, and 18,187 SME manufacturing units. Today, this sector employs more than 85,000 people, representing around 16.5% of the active workforce. Last year, the industrial sector witnessed a historical moment by generating an all-time high manufacturing output of 152 billion rupees, along with record-breaking domestic exports of 52.3 billion rupees. This is a moment of pride, as it clearly demonstrates the success of the revamped industrial policies and strategies. The merit also goes to our entrepreneurs, the workforce, and industry stakeholders who have shown confidence, commitment, and dedication. Mr. Speaker, sir, the export-oriented enterprise sector continues to strengthen its resilience as illustrated by export growth of 17.2% in 2022 as compared to 14.4% in 2021. This represents a net gain of around 6 billion rupees. Export of textiles and clothing grew by 8% in 2022. Fish and fish preparations recorded an increase of 20.8%. Jewelry and precious stones registered a growth of 44.1%. Medical devices posted a high of 11.8%. For this year, we are maintaining the increasing trend in export. Recent data released by Statistics Mauritius indicate that a growth rate of 9.8% has been achieved for the export-oriented enterprise sector in the first quarter of 2023 as compared to the corresponding period in 2022. Mr. Speaker, sir, members of the opposition have adversely commented on the performance of the EOE sector, attributing the growth to exchange rate fluctuations. I wish to assure everyone in this House that the growth remains positive, even fluctuations are factored in. Even when we discount the effect of depreciation, it remains on the growth, it maintains a growth trend. For some time now, our manufacturing enterprises are being constrained in their development process due to an acute shortage of skilled labor. During my different site visits in enterprises or various meetings, it was a plea constantly being brought up by industry operators. Recourse to foreign workers is presently a necessity. And for years, their contribution has been vital to maintain enterprises afloat. This budget has addressed this fundamental issue of timely availability of manpower to ensure the long-term viability of enterprises. Henceforth, work permits will be submitted through the national e-licensing system to ensure a seamless, hassle-free, transparent, and user-friendly process. The above measures, added to the abolition of the ratio of expatriates to local workers, will allow manufacturing enterprises greater flexibility and latitude. Mr. Speaker, sir, members of the House will agree that we have gone the extra mile to create a more conducive environment for cross-border labor mobility, and this will translate into more wealth creations. My ministry, along with Economic Development Board, will continue to pursue efforts to consolidate existing markets and unlock new business opportunities for the export-oriented enterprises. New market prospects are also opening up with coming into force of the AFCFTA, coupled with bilateral trade agreements, namely the SECPA with India and the FTA with China. In the same vein, our efforts will also be focused in expanding market horizons in countries such as Japan and Australia. I am given to understand that a preferential trade agreement with Indonesia and a comprehensive and economic partnership agreement with the United Arab Emirates are being negotiated. The government is undertaking negotiations to broaden the scope of the interim economic partnership agreement with the EU. All these initiatives will expand trade and export opportunities for EOEs in the global market. Mr. Speaker, sir, our manufacturing enterprises are continuously upgrading their production facilities to remain competitive and attractive. In 2022, more than 4.9 billion rupees were invested in industrial space, in plant and machinery. With the objective to revitalize industrial growth, my ministry is implementing the Industrial Policy and Strategic Plan 2020-2024 for Mauritius. As of now, 96 projects representing about 50% of the recommendations have already been implemented. 62 projects representing around 30% of the recommendations are in the process of being implemented. My ministry is coordinating with all stakeholders to kickstart implementation of 36 outstanding projects in the briefest delay. Mr. Speaker, sir, my ministry is implementing the Manufacturing 4.0 project with the support of the Commonwealth Secretariat. The aim is to promote the adoption of advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence, industrial Internet of Things, robotics and cloud computing in the industrial sector. The project is being implemented into 3 phases. Phase 1 consists of a study to assess the level of digitalization of manufacturing enterprises. Phase 2 will comprise capacity building program for selected enterprises. And Phase 3 will involve a study tour to a technologically advanced country. The enterprises may then avail of funding facilities available at the IFCM Limited for investment in advanced technologies to support automation. This is the first time that such a project is being undertaken for the manufacturing sector. And upon its successful implementation, my ministry will consider the possibility to replicate the project on a larger scale to benefit a larger number of enterprises, including SMEs. Green manufacturing practices are becoming prerequisites to attract new generation of customers inclined towards eco-friendly consumption patterns. This budget has provided for the introduction of an energy efficiency audit scheme for the manufacturing sector. Government will subsidize 75% of energy audit costs. An amount of 3 million rupees has been allocated under this scheme. It is expected that some 15 manufacturing enterprises will benefit from this support. Furthermore, it is good to note that mention is made in the budget for a 2-year rebate of 50% on the increase in electricity prices on condition that enterprises move towards 100% in renewable energies. In this connection, an amount of nearly 1 billion rupees has been earmarked over a period of 2 years. These measures will significantly alleviate the financial burden of energy-intensive enterprises. It will encourage them to adopt energy efficiency practices and invest in renewable energy in line with our carbon-neutral industrial sector policy. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Trade Promotion and Marketing Scheme, the Freight Rebate Scheme, the Export Credit Guarantee Insurance Scheme, and the Africa Warehousing Scheme were put into place along with a provision of 50% reduction in export port charges to assist manufacturing enterprises in their export drive. It is worth highlighting that under the Trade Promotion and Marketing Scheme, which provides a 60% rebate on air shipment of goods, 1.14 billion rupees has been disbursed to exporters and agribusinesses since 2016. As far as the freight rebate scheme is concerned, 123.4 million rupees has been made available to 96 enterprises which are exporting to Africa since 2014. As at April 2023, 22 enterprises have benefited from an amount of around 14 million rupees under the Export Credit Guarantee Insurance Scheme, which provides an insurance cover on worldwide exports. Mr. Speaker, sir, I therefore applaud the extension of these schemes. This will improve definitely the export drive of manufacturers. I must also put on record the brilliant job being done by the support institutions servicing the manufacturing sector. I am hereby referring to the Assay Office, Mauritius Standards Bureau, the National Productivity and Competitiveness Council, and the Academy of Design and Innovation. We have reinforced these institutions to offer a wide range of services, including testing, accreditation, and skills development to respond to industry needs. Mr. Speaker, sir, SMEs remain the most vital force of our economy. A total of 3,229 SMEs were registered during financial year 2022-2023, bringing the total number of SMEs registered at SME registration unit at 20,750. The number of jobs created by newly registered SMEs as at 30th May 2023 stood at 1,900. Since the leader of the opposition has expressed his worry about support to SMEs, it is my duty to highlight the different measures announced in their favor. SMEs provide 44% of all employment, contribute around 34.9% of the gross value added, and 10% of exports. The availability of manpower in quantity and quality are preconditions for the development of the SME sector. This budget contains commendable initiatives to help SMEs bridge the skills shortage problems. Furthermore, we can only be appreciative of the fact that the payment of up to 500 rupees of salary compensation has been extended. Government has stepped up its support to SMEs. Over the past financial year to date, some 3,481 SMEs have benefited from DBM loans for a total amount approved of approximately 919 million rupees. The total amount disbursed is estimated to be around 654 million rupees. Three further provisions of financial assistance made under the present budget testify government's commitment to boosting financial support to SMEs, namely, the provision of loans at preferential rates by the IFCM to SMEs, the provision of interest-free loans to our SMEs by the DBM, the extension of the COVID-19 special support scheme for another year, the extension of loans of up to 25 million rupees at a concessional rate of 3.5% per annum by the DBM to SMEs of the construction sector. My ministry welcomes the provision made in the budget to the food security agenda, namely grants for the construction of 2 sheltered farms, subsidy on purchase of fertilizers and potato seeds, grants of up to 300,000 for transformation facilities. The provision of 5 million rupees for the development of a shrimp farming scheme for SMEs. My ministry will approach the African Nation Rural Development Organization, ARDO, for technical expertise on that last initiative so that we can assist SMEs to tap in this unique opportunity of shrimp farming. Mr. Speaker, sir, new market development initiatives, especially in the wake of the different free trade agreements signed with Africa, India, and China, is an imperative for the growth of the SME sector. I welcome the proposed increase of 25%, up to 250,000 rupees under the International Fairs SME Refund Scheme. It is heartening to note that SMEs in road rigs will also be able to tap on these funds to further their market development requirements. I have maintained since the beginning of my intervention that this government puts people at the heart of its action. This principle is further highlighted in the provision for public contracts below 30 million rupees to be reserved for micro and small enterprises. This provision, along with the waiving of the minimum turnover requirement, will definitely strengthen the participation of our SMEs in the infrastructural development process. Mr. Speaker, sir, The same agenda for inclusiveness is further evident in the provision for a 30% margin of preference to SMEs and a further 10% for women-owned MSMEs participating in public procurement. These measures will go a long way expanding markets for SMEs and opening up new opportunities for their growth. Climate change has become an everyday reality. Greening or reduction of carbon footprints will, just as COVID-19, soon be in our daily vocabulary. From that perspective, I welcome the budget engaging and empowering local SMEs to further engage in renewable energy production. The Green Energy Loan Scheme being extended to SMEs by the DBM for rooftop electricity production will facilitate the gainful deployment of this technology across the island and add to our national grid while simultaneously addressing our sustainable development goals. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would wish now to expand on 6 projects initiated by my ministry for the benefit of the SME sector. 1. Diagnostic study of the informal sector in Mauritius. A diagnostic study of the informal sector in Mauritius to facilitate post-COVID-19 recovery has been prepared. A steering committee is being set up by the ministry to ensure effective implementation of the recommendations. 2. Mid-term review of the 10-year master plan for SMEs. A mid-term review of the 10-year master plan for SMEs was carried out as of end September 2022. 44% of the recommendations have been implemented and completed. 51% have been initiated and are ongoing, and 5% are yet to be initiated. Les Assises de l'Entrepreneuriat was held to provide a platform for MSMEs and concerned stakeholders to meet, share, and discuss key issues they are facing. SMEs have made proposals, and my ministry will act on their recommendations and proposals. SMEs are being encouraged and empowered to explore new business opportunities, create new jobs, stimulate innovation, and engage in promising sectors. My ministry has already established the ornamental fish farming scheme and the mini fruit processing plant scheme. Mr. Speaker, sir, in view of securing technical assistance to further enhance the development of the leather value chain in Mauritius, my ministry submitted a project to COMESA. This was done following a call for proposal. An amount of 5 million rupees has been earmarked. The worldwide market value of leather goods stands at 253 billion USD. Mr. Speaker, sir, just imagine if we could tap 0.5%, not 1%, but 0.5% of that market. An SME e-directory was launched by my ministry in September 2022. The e-directory is a vital marketing tool that increases the visibility of SMEs and enables them to obtain orders from individuals as well as the private sector and government bodies. As at date, 7,520 SMEs have been uploaded on the online platform. SME Mauritius, as a support institution, has been at the very forefront of the rebuilding exercise of SMEs through its various schemes, capacity building, and community awareness programs. To recall, over the past years, the sum budgeted for the support of SMEs has successively been increased from 20 million to 40 million to 60 million and now to 73 million rupees. These successive increases clearly emphasize government's intent of unreserved support to SMEs. As such, we welcome the increase in the cap of grants to be provided to SMEs by SME Mauritius from 200,000 rupees to 250,000 rupees, as well as the general increase in the grants budget of 73 million rupees. Even more gratifying is the way grants are put to optimal use as evidenced by figures. During financial year 2022-2023, 896 MSMEs have obtained the diverse schemes offered by SME Mauritius. These beneficiaries have a cumulative turnover of 2.7 billion rupees based on their MRA returns and employ and contribute CSG for a total number of 3,590 employees. Therefore, over the past 3 years, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the wake of COVID, SME Mauritius has supported 2,400 SMEs through direct grants. And these beneficiaries have a cumulative turnover of 7.8 billion rupees and provide employment for 10,600 employees. In line with the inclusiveness agenda of SME Mauritius, 68% of the beneficiaries are micro-enterprises with an annual turnover of less than 2 million rupees, while the remaining 32% have a turnover of more than 2 million rupees. Given the current highly complex business environment and conscious of the necessity to revisit the agility, internal capabilities, and endurance of SMEs, SME Mauritius introduced the Business Transformation Scheme 3 months ago. 40 SMEs have currently been onboarded on this transformative journey that will include process re-engineering, automation, digitalization, risk assessment, compliance and governance reviews, hand-holding, and mentoring. The 40 SMEs will implement their individual transformative action plans with the help of SME Mauritius and that of a consultant. Concurrently, SME Mauritius has also launched its greening support scheme, which puts a lot of emphasis on the greening initiatives of SMEs to further the sustainability agenda. SMEs are being helped to adopt and acquire energy-saving equipment, renewable energy systems, and recycling mechanism. Mr. Speaker, sir, an enduring culture of entrepreneurship can only be achieved through a continuous process of skills and competency development. The end objective of the training provided by SME Mauritius is very specific. It is not the search for a job, but to empower people for self-employment and autonomy. At SME Mauritius, participants are trained to a level of knowledge and skills where they feel confident they can enterprise their knowledge and produce profitably and sustainably for markets. For financial year 2022-2023, SME Mauritius has trained 872 entrepreneurs. Mr. Speaker, sir, ever since I was assigned the portfolio of cooperative in December 2014, my mission has been to revitalize this sector with game-changing measures and projects. I am pleased to note that the cooperative model is being increasingly adopted and understandably supported by government. The budget sends a strong signal that we need to consolidate local food production where cooperatives are actively involved. Last year, an amount of 10 million rupees was allocated on the Boost to Local Production Scheme to provide financial assistance to cooperative societies for acquisition of equipment. Some 40 cooperative societies have directly benefited from the scheme. I appreciate that this year the amount has been increased to 12 million rupees. I am also glad that zero budget natural farming scheme to promote green and sustainable agriculture has been maintained with a provision of 1 million rupees. The budget makes provision for 2 million rupees for the grant of 200,000 rupees to cooperative societies for setting up seedling production units. Our fishermen cooperatives have not been left behind. The Mauritius Fishermen Cooperative Federation has been maintained with a grant of 2.5 million rupees. This will enable the Federation to continue its activities. I am also pleased to note that the grant for the acquisition of semi-industrial fishing boats for cooperative societies has been increased to 6 million rupees. Cooperative societies are being encouraged to engage in emerging sectors and to adopt sustainable practices. The management of waste is a major challenge facing Mauritius. The recycling sector, besides reducing the amount of waste sent to landfills, conserving our ecosystem and saving energy, also offers various business opportunities. The budget provision of 3 million rupees allocated and the waste recycling scheme would enable more cooperative societies to integrate the circular economy. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have walked the House through 3 important economic pillars under my ministerial portfolio. And already the House can appreciate the massive support which is being allocated to consolidate these sectors. Yes, we can debate on and on that more could have been done, but one must realize that resources are not infinite. And in this particular time, this is the best budget that this government could come up with. What brought our country to this point today is a belief that the future could belong to us. The optimism and resilience has sustained us and carried us through downturns and disaster, through recession and pandemic. And the belief in opportunity fairly shared has underpinned our greatest achievements. The same spirit drives our government, and it shapes this budget. A determination to tackle the big challenges and seize the big chances. A deep faith in our people, their skills, their innovation and aspiration. A plan for security, for prosperity, for growth. An economic strategy to help with cost of living pressures now and to maximize and extend the opportunities of the future to more of our people in our country. I thank you for your attention, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Mr. Speaker, sir. Monsieur le Président, avant que je rentre dans le vif de mon discours, permettez-moi de réfuter le ministre Bola, qui a, pendant son discours, fait référence à notre secteur de l'exportation, en disant que notre secteur a fait un record cette année-ci par rapport à l'exportation, mais je vais lui référer aux chiffres publiés par le Statistique Mauritius. Et il faut bien voir, il faut bien analyser le chiffre, Monsieur le ministre. Il faut faire une différence entre le secteur de l'exportation en ce qui concerne les domestic exportation, qui n'a pas, où on n'a pas eu de grande growth, mais par contre, c'est vrai de dire que par rapport au secteur de transbordement, storage, etc., c'est vrai qu'on a eu une croissance. Mais ce qui est important, c'est que c'est le secteur domestique, de domestic exportation, qui nous emmène de l'emploi et de foreign exchange. Deuxièmement, on avait annoncé dans le budget l'année dernière qu'on allait avoir 2 vessels qu'on allait charter pour exporter dans la région, dans l'Afrique et aussi en Inde. Et on avait dit que ces 2 vessels will be operational as from October last year. On n'a rien entendu, Monsieur le Président, par rapport aux 2 supposed vessels that were going to be chartered. Et aussi, je vais demander au ministre, allez voir les chiffres par rapport à notre exportation sous le traité qu'on a signé avec l'Inde, avec la Chine. Regardez le déficit commercial entre ces 2 pays. Alors, c'est faux quand vous venez parler de record par rapport à l'exportation. Monsieur le Président, j'ai été conseillé par des personnes bien avisées dans la sphère politique, qu'après un exercice budgétaire, le grand public n'est pas intéressé par la provenance des revenus que le gouvernement a collectés pendant les années précédentes, mais qu'il est plutôt attiré par les incentives, les allowances, les freebies que le budget lui propose. Je suis d'un avis contraire. car un citoyen responsable devrait au contraire s'enquérir si le ministre des Finances a remboursé dans la poche une somme juste, équitable et suffisante que le gouvernement a collectée grâce à l'inflation et à la dépréciation de notre roupie aux dépens du contribuable. C'est ce que les gens responsables cherchent, Monsieur le Président. La provenance des revenus doit aussi intéresser les milliers de ménagères qui ont vu leur pouvoir d'achat diminuer face à la cherté de la vie. Nos aînés qui ont été privés d'une compensation salariale pendant 4 années consécutives et qui ont vu les prix des médicaments grimper conséquemment devraient aussi être concernés. Les consommateurs de l'essence, les premières victimes de l'inflation, sont plus que concernés. Les jeunes adultes qui vont bénéficier de ce 20 roupies, 20 000 roupies, one-off payment. Ouais, après l'inflation, ça devient 20 roupies malheureusement. Les jeunes adultes qui vont devenir des bread earners sont aussi concernés parce qu'ils ne seront eux aussi malheureusement pas épargnés de l'effet spirale d'une inflation bien calculée, bien intentionnée par le ministre des Finances. Et je vais en parler au cours de mon discours, Monsieur le Président. Un citoyen responsable qui a à cœur son pays et l'avenir de ses enfants doit aussi être concerné par ce que le budget propose afin de relancer l'économie, d'instaurer un climat de confiance pour nos investisseurs, attirer nos jeunes à retourner au pays après leurs études, d'empêcher une exode de nos jeunes vers d'autres pays comme le Canada, comme Luxembourg, comme a bien dit le leader de l'opposition, et comme nous sommes malheureusement en train de témoigner en ce moment. Et aussi qu'il y ait de la méritocratie dans les recrutements et que nos institutions fonctionnent en toute indépendance. Alors, de ce fait, Monsieur le Président, une bonne partie de mon discours va être consacrée aux revenus que le ministre des Finances a si astucieusement collectés pour le besoin du budget. Mr. the Speaker, there are mainly 4 ways, amongst others, that a government collects revenue to meet the budget. Premier, by raising taxes. You increase personal income tax, you increase corporate tax, you increase la VAT. By borrowing, increasing the debt burden. Troisième, by inflation, et c'est ce qui nous intéresse pour ce budget. Et aussi, by printing money, dépréciation. The government, unfortunately, cannot raise taxes, obviously, because its popularity is at its lowest. Nor can it borrow because it has already exhausted its borrowing capacity, if not to say brought the country on the brink of bankruptcy. 485 milliards la dette publique. So very astutely, mais aussi dangereusement, for the past years, the Minister of Finance, together with his close acolyte, le gouverneur de la Banque de Maurice, have seized the opportunity of the crisis to resort to inflation and depreciation of our rupee in order to collect revenue. Like Winston Churchill used to say, never waste a good crisis. So who is responsible for the high inflation rate, Mr. the Speaker? True, it is that because of COVID and the war, there was a spike in inflation in the years 2020, 2021, because of the distortion in the supply of food and commodities. But as from 2022, Many countries with similar economies like ours managed to control the inflation. But why we did not manage to do so? As I speak today, Mr. the Speaker, sir, the inflation rate in Seychelles, as earlier on said by the leader of the opposition, is about 2.7%. And ours is at 10.8%. One would ask, what is the difference between us and the Seychelles? There's not much difference in terms of the negative impact of the crisis. They also suffered from the lockdowns because of the COVID. They also had to borrow to support their population by giving incentives during the COVID. Their tourist industry have equally suffered as has Mauritius. In fact, their tourist industry in Seychelles, Mr. the Speaker, accounts for above 20% of their GDP. Whilst for Mauritius, it contributes to only 10% of the GDP. They have also suffered from increase in the food and commodity prices. They also suffered from the war in Russia and Ukraine. But yet they managed to get back the inflation rate at a low level and prevent the currency depreciation. You know what is the difference, Mr. the Speaker? The only difference is that whilst they stayed focused on creating growth by opening their borders at the right time and consolidating their fiscal policies, we were busy printing money, helicopter money, to the tune of 158 milliards, which has led today to the depreciation of the Mauritian rupee and which has contributed to inflation. This is the reality. If you go and look at the budget 2020-2021, the Bank of Mauritius transferred 60 billion to the consolidated fund, over and above the 18 billion that was supposed to use to make early repayment of loans. Early repayment of loans, we have not yet reimbursed the loan. The money is still there, 18 milliards. And then they set up the MIC. Bank of Mauritius transferred 80 milliards in MIC, supposed to help companies in difficulties, and we know who actually benefited. We won't go into this today because we are talking about the budget. So out of thin air, 158 milliards are provided from our reserves, from which 60 billion gifted down to government to provide for past budgets, and without any obligation for government to return back the money. Some of the 60 billion is still being used in this budget funds in special funds. Other countries, Singapore, they have borrowed money from their central banks, but they have already returned back the money in accordance with healthy fiscal and monetary policies. But for Mauritius, you know what, Mr. the Speaker, sir? The IMF had to red flag. The IMF had on 2 occasions had to red flag this financial move by the Bank of Mauritius. If you go to the report, and I quote from the 2021 report, Article 4 consultation report, they said that the central bank should refrain from providing direct financing to the government and engage in quasi-physical activities. They said that we should reform the Bank of Mauritius laws to make the Bank of Mauritius independent. They said that the central bank, the reserves of the central bank should be recapitalized, and I'll come to that later. They said that the central bank should relinquish the ownership of the MIC. En 2022 also, they came back. They said the same thing today as I speak, Mr. the Speaker, sir. Neither the government has passed a new law to ensure the independence of the Bank of Mauritius, nor has the Bank of Mauritius relinquished the ownership of the MIC, and more importantly, the government has not recapitalized the reserves of the Bank of Mauritius. What is recapitalization? It means that the government should at least return back part of the money. out of the 158 million to the Bank of Mauritius. But the government never returned back the money, and the Bank of Mauritius instead responded to the recommendations of the IMF. You know how, Mr. the Speaker? By depreciating the rupee. Go and check. By doing so, the Bank of Mauritius locked the value of the Mauritian rupee at a highly depreciated level. And this is the main reason why, as from May 2021, the rupee depreciated sharply. We know that prior to that, the rupee started depreciating, yes, as a result of lockdowns, but it depreciated sharply in 2021 as a result of the Minister of Finance and the BOM's astuteness. It is important that the population knows that during the financial crisis, when the Labour Party was in power, the Mauritian currency depreciated by only 12% from 2005 to 2014. 12% only. Despite having gone through global recession and despite having gone through the financial crisis, this government has depreciated the Mauritian rupee by 42% since they came in power in 2014. Si vous avez, si en 2014, vous aviez 3000 roupies, vous pouviez remplir votre caddie. En 2014, avec 3000 roupies, vous pouviez remplir votre caddie. En 2023, avec les mêmes 3000 roupies, même pas la moitié. Un quart. Et c'est ça que vous appelez, oser et protéger, Monsieur le ministre. Hein? Now, after that government has collected the milliard, as I've said, due to inflation and depreciation, reducing the purchasing power of the population considerably, they are now acting like PNOL during budget times. PNOL during budget times, giving freebies to create what economists would term illusion money. When your money in nominal terms, taking into account inflation, does not reflect the real value. This is what government is doing. Now, if they had given back what they had taken away due to inflation and depreciation, we could have said, okay. But the truth is that they are giving back far less, not even half of what they took. Ça, Monsieur le Président, on appelle ça du vol. Let us see the figures. En 2020-2021, la MRA a transféré 86 milliards au Consolidated Fund en termes de taxes. En 2021-2022, sans aucune réforme majeure à notre système de taxation. Et ce qui est plus important, sans aucune augmentation en termes de volume de consommation. Pour la première fois, la MRA a transféré 107 milliards au Consolidated Fund. Record, la première fois, la MRA a amassé de la taxe à la hauteur de 100 milliards. Une augmentation de 20 milliards en plus grâce à l'inflation. En 2022-2023, encore une fois, sans aucune réforme, la MRA gagne 132 milliards, une augmentation de 25 milliards de plus. Et là, pour ce financial year 2023-2024, they are expecting to get an amount of 156 milliards, 24 milliards de plus. So despite the progressive income tax, despite the decrease in the price of fuel, despite the freebies that they are giving, they are still expecting for next year to have 24 million more in terms of taxes. And this is because, once again, all the freebies that are being given will again be absorbed by inflation. People will spend, and surprise, surprise, 24 milliards will be created next year as a result of inflation. So despite what the minister said about inflation, that it will be reduced to 7%, but when you look at the figures of the statistics of Mauritius, the CPI index, le courbage ménagère, a resté le même, monsieur le ministre. Now, so for last year, the increase in tax collection was 25 billion, and now they are giving back an increase in terms of social support, which includes allowance for national minimum wage, CSG income allowance, special child allowance, youth to adulthood scheme, and home loan relief scheme. You know, these freebies, I've said that they have obtained 25 milliards. All these freebies now amount to only 10 milliards. So they are, as I've said, giving back not even half what they collected. And I've not included the payment for the old age pension because this is being provided for by the CHC. So what do we conclude, Mr. the Speaker, sir? What do we conclude? The takeaways are, firstly, government has for the couple of years indirectly taxed the people through inflation and depreciation. Secondly, that indirect taxation will continue the coming financial year. And thirdly, government has taken much more from the people's pocket than what it is now reimbursing through the game of money illusion. Mr. Speaker, let me now address a few measures mentioned in the budget, supposedly to alleviate the financial burden of the population. Firstly, the reduction of 5 rupees 10 per litre in the price of mogas, l'essence, from 74 rupees 10 to 69 rupees. This decrease represents a decrease of about 5.8%. And it represents approximately 1 billion rupees. From June 2022 to date, the STC has transferred approximately 12 billion rupees. 5% représente que 1 milliard rupees. And they have collected, depuis June 2022, 12 milliards rupees that they have transferred in the consolidated fund in terms of taxes and excise duty and contributions. So they have accumulated 12 billions, they are giving only 1 million. And this is what they call dare and care policy. Now, even that 1 billion that they are giving this year will be absorbed in the next financial year through inflation being indexed on VAT and excise duty. Some of the contributions, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the price structure does not make sense. MID fund, storage facilities, all these do not make any sense. The stores have already been constructed long time ago. MID fund does not exist. MID does not exist. I don't know why they have MID fund in the price structure. They were collecting 3 rupees per vaccines during COVID. Now, COVID is over. They're not purchasing vaccines. What they did, they absorbed that 3 rupee in contribution for excise duty, raising the contribution for excise duty from 9 rupees to 12 rupees. Government has recklessly terminated the contract with Mangalo refineries. It is now paying at a much higher price by going through an intermediary purchasing petroleum from Oman. The private refineries today in India are purchasing petroleum products from Russia at half the market price and selling refined products at a much cheaper price than elsewhere. And you know how much this government would have benefited had they not terminated the contract with Mangalore refineries. The reason why the price stabilization account has a deficit today is because we all know 6 million had to be paid because of the Betamax case. You know, Mr. the Speaker, when you look at the world chart on prices of fuel across the world, Mauritius is ranked at the lower half amongst those countries that sell price to their petrol to the people at a much higher price than other countries, together with France and the UK. So what we expect from this government, what we had expected in the budget, was for government to come with a bold decision to revisit the price structure, because it does not do justice anymore to the consumers, and find also cheaper suppliers for the benefits of the consumers. This is what we were expecting from the Minister of Finance, not a decrease of, 5 rupees per litre. The second measure, Mr. the Speaker, that I wish to address is the 20,000, I'm used to say 20 rupees, well, 20,000 rupees to the youth to adulthood scheme. Bien sûr, c'est une mesure électoraliste, sans aucun doute. I have no problem with that. Que après nos pensionnaires, maintenant, ce sont les jeunes qui sont dans les visières du gouvernement, to get their group votes. Okay. It will cost some 300 million every year. I have no problem. But what is important is that there is sufficient control so that the money is spent for the purpose it is meant to be spent. Ça, c'est important. But what is more important today? Pas 20 000 rupees. What is more important is that the public sector debt today stands at 485 milliards. So these young adults will start their adulthood not with 20 000 rupees in their bank account. They are going to start this journey with a debt of 485 000 rupees per head as well, Mr. the Speaker, sir. Et vous venez vous dites que votre budget est un budget osé et protégé, Monsieur le Ministre. But you know what concerns us, Mr. the Speaker, sir? Apart from that 20 000 rupees one-off payment, the other day we had a PNQ about those. My friend Ganga Pausad will talk about that, but we had a PNQ on those following the extended program course. You know, Mr. the Speaker, sir, every year the Ministry of Education spends about 18 to 19 billions on education, educating our youth. But yet, on a entendu qu'on a eu 98% d'échecs à la fin du extended programme. 3210 élèves sont jetés sur le pavé. How, I'm asking the Minister of Finance, how will 20 000 rupees one-off payment help those category of students who will tomorrow attain 18 years? How will this help them? What has been proposed in this budget to address the problems of those 11 000 youth currently following the extended program? What is there for them in the future, when they will attain adulthood? C'est ça que vous parlez de quoi? Dare and care policy, Monsieur le Ministre? Mr. the Speaker, let me come to one important issue. We talk about measures, we come, c'est trop facile de venir dire qu'on va donner ça, on va faire ça, But with regards to implementation, on a un problème. Le ministre des Finances, in his budget 2021-2022, avec raison, he had set up a project implementation and monitoring agency under his ministry. Et je dis bien avec raison, au moins, hein, il est venu avec ce agency to ensure that projects announced in the budget are expeditiously implemented by the concerned ministry. But there's one project which concerns the project for National Flood Management Program, where 11.7 milliards were earmarked for the construction of 1,500 drains across the island. There are the drain projects that the Minister of Finance takes enormous pleasure, to repeat every year since he announced it in the budget 2021. And they were supposed to be completed by June next year, 2024. You know, Mr. the Speaker, sir, according to the audit report published this year, out of the 1,500 drains project, only 84, je dis bien, out of 1,500 drain projects, only 84 work orders were issued in respect of drain projects, totaling 647.9 millions. Out of 11.7 milliards that were earmarked, 647.9 millions has been spent for 84 drain projects. This is why, as at 30 June 2023, we still have 30 milliards which is left in the special reserve funds which have not been spent. And this is what you call dare and care policy. Huh? Now, I come to the measure, I won't be long, the measures announced for food security. Food security, I'm nearly finished. Food security, the Minister of Agro-Industry will be speaking after me. Every year we hear the same rhetoric. We are heavily dependent on importation of food. 75% de notre food, on est en train d'importer. And therefore, every year, the same thing again, measures are being announced to reduce our importation on food products. En pratique, Monsieur le Président, rien ne se passe. You can list a number of incentives, and I'm sure the Minister of Agro-Industry, who will be speaking after me, will again list a number of those incentives, etc., that have been highlighted in the budget. I'm not saying that the incentives are not welcome, mais vous avez encore une fois un problème sur l'implémentation de ces mesures. True, we are self-dependent as far as la viande cerf is concerned. I'm not talking about this because the minister is well placed to know. But when it comes to crops and vegetables, nothing concrete is being done. The minister will remember I had put a question last week with regards to the availability of wheel tractors at the MCFI that are given to small planters for them to prepare their land for cultivation. You know, Mr. the Speaker, sir, according to the minister's answer himself, there are 16 wheeler tractors available. 10 are out of order because they are beyond repair. Out of 16, 10 are out of order because they are beyond repairs. And out of the 6 available, only 2 are dedicated to small planters. Now, And you're talking about food security. A small planter. The reason why I had put this question is because a small planter from my constituency told me that he had been waiting for 1 year now. And he's still waiting for a wheel tractor to be able to get a wheel tractor from the MCFI to be able to develop his land for cultivation of crops, etc. Les mesures en ce qui concerne to reduce water shortages. We have been spending billions, Mr. the Speaker, sir, for pipe replacement. I won't go into the details, but I'll just brush up on it. For pipe replacement. But every year, we are having the same problem during drought seasons. The Central Water Authority today is heavily indebted. Every year they take loans, millions from government, and they don't pay back. They don't even have enough water tankers to ensure water supply during water cuts. They don't have pumps available in their stores to replace the broken ones. An old pensioner, an old lady from my constituency, who stays alone because his son is working overseas, has applied for a water connection since, you know when? April last year. She has been told since April last year that there is no water meter available in the stores of the CWA. And she's still waiting for 1 year, despite that I have talked to the responsible officer of the CWA in the region, and despite the fact that I raised the matter during adjournment times in this very house. Is this what you call dare and care policy? An old-age pensioner lady waiting for a water meter depuis avril l'année dernière?
4 minutes left.
4 minutes left, yes. Thank you very much. The Metro Express today costing us nearly 40 milliards for 40 kilometers of rail track. 1 kilometer of rail track costing us 1 milliard, 1 billion. 1 kilometer of rail track costing us 1 billion. And the same people back in 2014 wrote to the Prime Minister of India asking him to put a halt to the project because this will weigh heavily in the purse of the public money. Right? I'm not criticizing the project, but I'm showing the demagogy that you did back at that time. And in the budget, we are subsidizing 1.3 milliards. We are subsidizing Metro Express for operational expenses. Let me end, Mr. the Speaker, sir, since you told me that I have only 4 minutes. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if this is going to be the last budget of this government or there is going to be another one before the elections. However, I have to say that in terms of relance de l'économie, we have lost 9 precious years since 2015. We have been running the country on consumption, on borrowing, on inflation, on depreciation. We are living in a bubble away from the reality, an illusion by short-term wealth. When the bubble will burst, Mr. the Speaker, sir, I don't know if they are going to still be here. There. I don't know if they are... No, I mean, in terms of whether they will still be in government. Mais le réveil sera brutal, Monsieur le Président, pour la population. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me the floor to intervene on budget 2023-2024. Allow me, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, sir, a few seconds to convey condolences also myself, although through you, the whole House has conveyed condolences to the family of late Honorable Ashit Ganga. I have to say so because I am speaking from the very seat in which he was sitting. So I cannot this afternoon, start my speech without a moment of thought to my former colleague, Honorable Ashit Ganga. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me come to the budget 2023-2024. First of all, let me recadrer un petit peu le débat. What has been and what is still the philosophy behind each and every budget of this government? This is what we have to ask. A budget is not just balancing the books ou un exercice comptable. Il y a toute une philosophie derrière le budget, and there is no better way to explain the philosophy of this government's budgets, I say with an S, because one after the other, we are implementing a particular vision. And the vision of this government can be found in our program, 2020-2024. This is what we are implementing. And in government program 2020-2024, what do we find? Let me quote the 10, if I may say, the pillars or the principles of our mandate. Towards an inclusive, high-income and green Mauritius, forging ahead together. And of the 10 principles, it starts with number 1, inclusiveness at the heart of the nation. And I put the question, have we not made this principle, inclusiveness, at the heart of each and every budget ever since we are in government? This has been our motto. Inclusiveness at the heart of the nation, Mr. Speaker, sir. Second, education and skills for the world of tomorrow. Budget après budget, nous avons augmenté la dotation budgétaire. And I will leave that to my colleague, the Vice Prime Minister, for education. Improving the well-being and quality of life of citizens. Building the economy of the future. Public infrastructure for an innovative Mauritius. A peaceful, safe, and secure Mauritius. A sustainable and green society. Strengthening democracy and governance. Transformational development of Rodrigues and the outer islands. Diplomacy and foreign policy. If we take each and every one, we will find each and every one of these principles in all the budgets prepared and presented by this government. Each and every one of them. And it starts, I reiterate, with the word inclusiveness. And budget 2023-2024 is no different. It is about inclusiveness in the economy. Il y a eu plusieurs budgets, même avant 2020-2024 programme, Mr. Speaker, sir. If we go back, even if we start 2015, 2016, constantly, inclusiveness has been at the heart of our policy. We have to cater for those who need it most. And in all our budgets, this is what we have done, because the motto of the party, MSM, is unir pour bâtir. You can only build a society if you unite the people. And you cannot unite the people without fairness, equity. And this percolates in each budget presented by government. This is, again, therefore, one more budget. Comme dit en créole, tipa tipa, we are making progress in our government program, and we are one step ahead now, one more step in budget 2023-2024 towards our goal. Had it not been for COVID, we would have been much ahead in the implementation of our program. We admit qu'on a pris que du retard. We admit that. We're trying to catch up, and we have indeed been able to catch up, as the figures show. So this is the context, this is the philosophy of budget 2023-2024. Now, let me therefore come to the budget itself. First of all, let me apologize to the House. I will not be able, in the time allocated to me, to explain in detail each and every measure pertaining to the ministries of agro-industry, as well as Attorney General's office, because there are so many of them. I have picked the main ones, and I understand that maybe the others will be addressed in the course of debates in the coming 2 weeks. Before I come to the budget, the measures, I want to give a note of personal appreciation for the measures contained in the budget 2023-2024. It is a very sound balance between continuity and innovation. Il y a de la continuité dans les mesures. For example, so many schemes which have been announced in previous years and which are being renewed and increased in terms of budgetary provision. And there are other measures which I categorize as being innovative. And to those who say that ce budget ne contient rien d'innovant, I will come to it a bit later. The next point, the next part of my intervention, Mr. Speaker, sir, will concern the sectoral issues. But before coming to the sectoral issues, I heard the Honourable Leader of the Opposition this morning saying at the beginning of his intervention that this budget, part of it was un budget de mea culpa, that we were admitting some things we did were not as expected, and we...
Assurance. Et on n'est plus besoin faire la quai. L'on Mighty Money et a 8 partenaires avec qui on est capable de payer l'assurance. Pour faire ce bon paiement-là, il est bien simple. L'on application Mighty Money ou bien sélecter Bill pour faire ou paiement l'assurance. Après, ou choisir Direct Payment. Et ensuite, choisir l'assurance qui ou bien payer. Pour compléter tout paiement, ou bien remplir toute bonne information. Voilà, il est aussi simple que ça. Si vous avez envie de simplifier la vie, download app Mighty Money. Mighty Money, one app for everything.
Moi, je vais faire tout ce que je peux pour éloigner Miguel de Louisa et de Katharina. Tu verras, Louisa viendra me supplier de revenir vers elle lorsqu'elle aura tout perdu.
Et comment tu vas t'y prendre?
Il rumine sa vengeance, mais baisse la garde.
Ah!
Maintenant, laisse ma femme tranquille.
Laissez tranquille, Miguel. Vous ne serez jamais tranquille.
À ce stade, le maillon faible est le plus vulnérable.
Donne-moi une bonne raison de ne pas te faire sauter la tête immédiatement, parle.
Parce que vous avez besoin de...
Of course, the sugar sector. Then, on the crop sector, the non-sugar crop sector, and then I will move on to the innovative issues I have highlighted in this budget. Concerning sugar sector, first of all, the guaranteed price of 25,000 rupees, as was announced way back in 2019. It was a historic announcement in 2019 that a guaranteed price will be offered at 25,000 rupees for sugar. This has already made history. It has brought satisfaction across the board. And this year, this figure of 25 is being brought to 27,500. Let me, therefore, give the figures as a date for year 2020, financial year 2022-2023. As a date, provisional payments have been effected. I say provisional because, of course, the harvest has just started, and after completion, final payment will be made. So as at the date, that is May 2023, the Mauritius Sugar Syndicate has paid sugar advances of 21,000 rupees per ton of sugar to all planters. For bagasse, a provisional payment of 2,200 rupees per ton of sugar paid to planters, And this payment was made on 26 December 2022. For molasses, a provisional payment of 2,000 rupees per ton paid to planters, and this payment was made on 28 December 2022. Final payments to planters and producers will be effected in July, when the final ex-syndicate price will be determined by the MSS, that is expected as at the end of June. Therefore, for what is being announced in terms of this guaranteed price, this figure reaches, therefore, 27,500. There was in this year 2022 an anomaly. I have to take a few minutes to explain on the question of payment of 25,000 rupees. There was indeed an anomaly. I seized the opportunity of budget debates to explain to cane planters that this anomaly has been rectified in December last. Let me explain. In the years 2019, 2020, and 2021, the SIFB premium was deducted, and it ought not to have been deducted. In, therefore, December 2022, government decided to refund that deduction of the SIFB premium from the guaranteed price of 25,000 rupees. That deduction for all the 3 years of 2019, 2020, and 2021 amounted to a total of 105 million rupees, Mr. Speaker, sir. And the deduction was therefore reimbursed. And there was a correction of this anomaly for the small planters. And the total sum of 105 million rupees was disbursed in December last year, which was obtained from the National Resilience Fund and paid to small planters as follows: 467.29 rupees per ton of sugar for crop 2019, 591 and 47 cents per ton of sugar for crop 2020, and for crop 2021, 1,403 and 38 cents were refunded to all small planters, therefore correcting this anomaly in the payment of the guaranteed price of 25,000 rupees. The other issue concerning the sugar sector, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to highlight, because it directly affects the workers of the sugar sector, and that is the question of the VRS and the blueprint. The House will recall how the previous government did everything to delay the implementation of this historic scheme called VRS. So many years have gone by, and many beneficiaries have been waiting to receive their title deeds. Ever since this government is in office, we have expedited the administrative procedures, and we have implemented all of them. For the past financial year, I will not come to all those VRS which have implemented in the previous years. I will just highlighting for year 2022. And that, I say this because this falls under the direct responsibility, supervisory responsibility of the MCIA. So as I said, the MCIA is directly involved with the monitoring of these schemes of VRS, ERS, and Blueprint, and address difficulties in order to ensure that all beneficiaries receive their title deeds within the shortest possible delay. For the financial year 2022-2023, the number of beneficiaries who received their title deeds concern sites situated at Riambel, and beneficiaries for the VRS scheme is 115. And for the site near, in the vicinity of Kazela, for the blueprint scheme, the beneficiaries number 107. The official ceremony for the handing over of title deeds to beneficiaries for the site at Riambel was held on 1st of March of this year, held at Bonham Hall of the MCIA in Réduit. Concerning the 107 beneficiaries under the blueprint scheme, that is closure of Medjin Sugar Factory, the official handing over ceremony of the title deeds were held at Medjin Limited on the 7th of April 2023. So we have 115 and 107 who have beneficiaries who have received their title deeds in this financial year. For the remaining, there are to remain 2 VRS sites, namely Palma and Petite Rivière. I can only say, in short, that work is in progress. I look forward to reporting progress in the days and weeks to come. Mr. Speaker, so the next issue concerning the cane sector is the next issue which I want to highlight in the course of my speech concerns the revolving fund. The revolving fund was proposed in the previous financial year, that is the one ending now, 2022-2023. The idea came forward in the course of discussions with stakeholders, and here I take a minute to thank the stakeholders for having proposed the idea of the revolving fund. And in the previous, well, we're still in the same year, so in this financial year 2022-2023, a sum of 200 million was allocated for the revolving fund. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am pleased to say that the 200 million was fully utilized. Fully utilized, succès sur toute la ligne, so much that there has been a request to renew the scheme, and I have to thank now my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Finance. He has not only renewed the revolving fund scheme, but he has more than doubled the allocation. From 200 million for this year, it will be 500 million for year 2023-2024. What is the idea of the revolving fund? It is money which will be used to plant new cane, because if you do not plant new cane, production levels will go down. You have to renew and plant new canes every 6-7 years at the most, and this costs some money. And therefore, the cane revolving fund was, as I said, put forward in the previous financial year, renewed for this year, and the total sum allocated is 500 million, and it is expected that this will be used to replant some 7,000 arpents of cane fields with new ratoon cane. This measure, Mr. Speaker, sir, will increase the productivity per unit and to ensure that producers remain in cane cultivation activity and continue to supply cane and associated products to the sugarcane cluster. I am informed that there is a technical committee at the level of the MCIA which will invite proposals from planters for replantation of cane fields for financial year 2023-2024. The applications will be processed and recommendations made to the DBM. Why DBM? Because the cane revolving fund is a scheme which is managed at the level of the DBM. And the DBM makes arrangement to provide loan to planters at an annual preferential rate of only 2.5%. Mr. Speaker, sir, there is only one more issue concerning the cane sector which I wish to highlight, and that concerns the National Biomass Framework. But with your permission, I will come to it a bit later. Let me come to the non-sugar crop sector. Non-sugar crop sector, Mr. Speaker, sir, if I have to summarize, we have heard and we will continue to hear from so many, and even the Honourable Distinguished Speaker before me said, we are not doing enough. We hear even outside the House, we are not doing enough. Nothing is being done. Criticisms all the way. Let's just look at the figures. Yes, we are a net food importing country. Nobody denies that. But let us look at the figures and see whether we have made progress. In 2022, the agriculture sector has contributed to 3.9% of gross value added. The sector plays a multifunctional role in the socio-economic development of the country in terms of biodiversity and environment protection, food security and nutrition, energy production, livelihoods, and well-being. I am quoting from the budget. In fact, I'm quoting from page 313 of this big document called Estimates 2023-2024. Therefore, let me continue. In 2022, some 27,000 were employed in the agriculture, forestry, and fishing sector. And this is the most interesting part. I continue. Food crop production increased by 6.7% from 108,012 tons in 2021 to 115,211 tons in 2022. This is encouraging, Mr. Speaker. Let me continue. A total area of 7,770 hectares under food crop was harvested in 2022. Indeed, this is also encouraging. Let me therefore continue with the same quote from the same page. Production under covered culture increased by 51.2% from 6,111 tons in 2021 to 9,237 tons in 2022. End of my quote. Yes, we are still importing food, but the figures are encouraging. I feel comforted, and the ministry feels comforted that we are on the right path. And we will increase local production. It doesn't happen overnight. The figures I have quoted speak for themselves. I can continue in terms of, from the same page, production of fresh poultry has increased from 49,100 tons in 2021 to 55,700 tons in 2022. I can go on. But I am only saying this. We are on the right path. Therefore, this justifies the continuation of a number of schemes which exist under the purview of the Ministry of Agro-Industry, whether it's for fertilizer, whether it's for seeds, whether it's for guaranteed price, whether it's for biofertilizer, whether it's for land mechanization, whether it's for livestock, etc., etc. Et je remercie l'honorable ministre des Finances pour les allocations concernant les subsides, que ce soit, as I said, fertilisants, etc., because we are on the right path and we should not stop here. We should continue, and he has provided the necessary budget for continuity in the number of schemes that are being implemented by the ministry. If we look at, now let me come to the production for seed production, seed purchase scheme, and yes, seed production and seed purchase schemes. There are, Mr. Speaker, sir, measures concerning seeds. Why I am singling out these measures? Because the figures, once again, speak for themselves. Before I come to the figures, let me come to those measures concerning seed production. In our quest, Mr. Speaker, sir, to enhance agricultural production, we have taken measures in seed production. In this year, financial year 2022-2023, production of vegetable seeds stood at 2,222 kilograms of seeds and 50,669 plants, including fruits and ornamentals, which have been provided to planters and the general public. These figures are expected to rise. In the forecast, the figure is 3,500 kilograms of seeds and 55,000 plants. Concerning the subsidy on seeds, a budget of 35.6 million rupees was earmarked in the financial year 2022-2023 to provide subsidy on seeds. There have been 341 beneficiaries, for which a total subsidy amount of 26.6 million rupees have been disbursed to growers. And for this year, a budget of 52 million is projected. So, in line with the budget the measures announced in this budget, 75% subsidy will be provided on seeds for cabbage, calabash, pumpkin, cucumber, and carrot. Now, this has to be coupled with the other measure announced in this budget, namely the 200,000 rupee grant for the setting up of seedling production unit by cooperative societies. This is managed in collaboration with the ministry under the purview of my honorable colleague, Minister Bula. Now, why have we announced these measures? To my mind, this is based on the figures we see for potatoes and onions. There are similar schemes for potatoes and onions. Traditionally, we have had these schemes for potatoes and onions because we still call potato onions strategic crops. What are the figures? If we go at the figures, I will not go far back in history. We will compare our figures of this government with our own figures. Let's go to, therefore, 2019. Production of potatoes stood at 14,687 tons. For year 2022, it has reached 16,500 tons. For onions, as at 2019, it stood at 3,219 tons. We have reached, in 2022, 7,000 tons. So if we look at the subsidies on the one hand and the increase in production, there is a direct correlation. If these figures reveal this direct correlation between the subsidies on the seeds and the total production, and there has been a continuity, encore une fois, in the effort over the years. Therefore, government is extending the same scheme for other products, and we are not stopping only at potatoes and onions. Therefore, it is being extended to cabbage, calabash, pumpkin, cucumber, and carrot. This is in line with boosting local production, and we will see the figures of local production rise year by year. This is why I want to highlight this issue of the seed production. Regarding this grant of 200,000 for cooperative societies, I can only invite noble members and the public at large to see the success story at La Marie, isn't it, at La Marie, where the cooperative under the MCIF have opened a seedling unit on their own, and they are working wonders. So this, the 200,000 rupee grant will go a long way to boosting local production of seeds, thereby increasing production of locally produced vegetables. Mr. Speaker, sir, the next item on the non-sugar crop sector concerns processing. I reiterate before this House the ongoing efforts of the Ministry of Agro-Industry in collaboration with the African Development Bank to boost processing. Instead of merely producing fresh products, we are encouraging the processing in collaboration with stakeholders, cooperative societies, the FARE, the University of Mauritius, and others to increase processing. Processing increases shelf life, processing puts value added, processing leads to export, and there are success stories. I recently met a youngster processing moringa. Moringa, I was looking for the word moringa. Commonly known bread morum, which grows everywhere. That youngster is today exporting processed moringa to Australia. It's not the well-established one in your constituency. This one, I don't want to name him, but he's processing for some time, but this one is a school leaver. He's a school leaver. He started by processing, And what are they doing with it in Australia? They are making fudge, yogurt. If you go to Australia, you will have a fudge, moringa fudge, and the moringa is coming from Mauritius. How is this export happening? It is through processing. And processing is not rocket science. Processing can happen with small grants. Processing is through déshydratation. And I'm so comforted in this in implementation of this scheme. There's one student I met at the University of Mauritius. She chose, as for her third-year dissertation subject, dehydration by a solar-powered oven. And this solar-powered oven was even on display at Mapu Field Office, the Fare Mapu Field Office. This is encouraging. And to those who say youngsters are not interested in agriculture, I seriously think that those persons are not connected to the reality. They are connected to the agro-industry and through processing. They just need to be given the right guidance. And this is what we are doing through our extension services, through our officers at Fare Agricultural Services. So this is why we are therefore, well, there are other many examples, but in the interest of keeping to the time that has been allocated to me, I cannot give some, list down all of them. So this is why this explains this new measure in this budget of 50% grant up to a maximum of 300,000 rupees to SMEs and cooperatives engaged in potato processing. Mr. Speaker, sir, the figures for import of potato chips, can give anybody here a headache. We are importing, I believe, I stand to be corrected, above 100 million rupees of imported potato chips. When in fact we can produce locally. And we can not only produce local potato chips, we can even produce chips out of other products. Yes, the banana chips of Mauritius is today a success story, being sold not only at the duty-free shop, but being exported. And this is another success story of a processing industry which started as an SME. In the days of, I don't know, it was called as media. Today, the same SME is a flourishing industry, making locally produced banana, transforming that into banana chips. And hotels today are not interested of serving potato chips to their clients. If the tourist has traveled 10,000 kilometers, it is not to come here to eat potato chips. He is coming here to eat aoui, violet, locally produced, and which can be transformed into, whether you call it chips or something else, but they are local products being transformed locally. C'est ça l'avenir. And this is what hotels look for. And there is a market for that. And this is why we are encouraging SMEs to go in that direction. And this budget, therefore, provides this 50% grant, as I say again, up to a maximum of 300,000 to SMEs and cooperatives engaged in processing. Now, there are other schemes, Mr. Speaker, sir. The support to farming community, and for the sheltered farming, as I say, I wish to reiterate, if we are on the right track, if we look at the figures, production under covered culture increased by 51.2% from 6,111 tons in 2021 to 9,237 tons in 2022. This fully justifies, therefore, the budget measures concerning production and in sheltered farming. Before moving on to my next part, I wish to highlight, and this is because of my honorable colleague Siraton, who is sitting next to me, the budget provision concerning the tea sector. I'm saying this because it concerns a major part of his constituency. It is good to recall this historic measure of the winter allowance. Never before has any government thought of paying a winter allowance to degrowers. It is only when... Continue, sir. Ali, you will... It was introduced, wait, listen to me. It was introduced when Honorable Siratan was Minister of Agro-Industry. Mon illustre prédécesseur a eu le... It was when Honorable, let me say it again. It was when Honorable Siratan was Minister of Agro-Industry that the winter allowance was introduced.
No more conversation.
It was, yes, and it was introduced in 2018-2019 budget, at the time when Honorable Pravin Kumar Jagran was also Minister of Finance. And at the time of introduction, the allowance was 50 cents per kilo. C'était un début. Gradually, it has increased year by year, reaching now the figure of 2.50 rupees per kilo. You know what is the importance of this winter allowance? Some people do not realize. For the winter, 3 winter months, tea growers receive zero revenue. And zero revenue for 3 months. How do they manage? This is when the winter allowance comes to help the tea growers to cope during the 3 long, hard winter months. Similar, these measures can appear to be simplistic, not costing so much, but it makes a lot of difference in the lives of people. Same as for the subsidy on livestock feed. I will recall a site visit in the region of Pechibelea. I always say that at budget time. He a breeder, and he was a young graduate from UTM, but he did not give up the breeding activity, his family breeding activity. He suggested to increase the subsidy on livestock feed. Since then, year by year, Honorable Padeachi has provided the necessary funding, and we have reached, if we look at the figure, it was not even half of that 2 years ago. We have reached now 15 rupees per kilo. At some point, it was 2 rupees per kilo, Mr. Speaker. We have reached 15 rupees. If we do not provide the necessary funding in this applicable schemes, local food production will never increase. And as I say, the figures speak for themselves. We are on the right path, and we will therefore, in a spirit of boosting local production, continue to provide under the different schemes that are being implemented by the ministry. As I said, I have singled out a few of them. There are so many more. But let me come to the next part of my intervention, and that concerns the innovative measures contained in the budget. I have heard outside that ce budget ne contient rien d'innovant. Well, un budget n'est pas fait pour être lu. Un budget est fait pour être étudié, Monsieur le Président. I have read very carefully over the weekend the budget speech of my honorable colleague, the Minister of Finance. I have singled out a few innovations. Well, not all of them fall under my purview, but I will come to those concerning my ministry, and of course, my colleagues will, I'm sure, explain the others. And I read page 9 of budget speech. I quote my honorable colleague, the Minister of Finance, at page 9, paragraph 67. Mr. Speaker, sir, without the opening of our economy to foreign talents, we will not be able to sustain high levels of growth and develop new economic sectors. We are engaging on a major reform of our migration policy. We will simplify the recruitment process for businesses. Those paragraphs will be 67, 68, and 69. And on the next page, paragraph 71, paragraph D, the ratio of foreign to local employees is being removed for specific sectors, end of quote. Now, how is that relevant for agro-industry? let's go to the annex to the budget. If we go to annex to budget speech, and before we go to the annex to budget speech, whoever is in the agricultural sector will tell you, Mr. Speaker, or it will say that loud and clear to anybody wishing to hear him. The number one problem of the agricultural sector, I'm sure even honorable distinguished speaker before me would not know. What is the number one problem of the agricultural sector? It is labor. It has been labor for a number of years. And I don't know when it will stop. It will no longer be a problem. But it is nowadays, the number one problem is labor. How are we going to address? Of course, it will have to be through migration policy. Of course, it will have to be through migration policy. But the agricultural sector has specificities in terms of recruitment of labor that we need to reform our certain rules and regulations to allow for this migration policy to be amended. And when we look at the annex, at page 33, I quote, page 33, job contractors for agricultural workers. Job contractors will be encouraged to recruit a pool of agricultural workers subject to compliance with conditions such as lodging and accommodation, as well as registration of the job contractors. This is the solution to the number one problem of our agricultural sector. It's labor. How are you going to boost production without labor? And the difficulty of recruiting. Of course, there are very strict rules and regulations, and it is onerous. So we need to enable the recruitment of pool of agricultural workers, because agricultural workers have their own specificities, whether it's working only a few hours of the day as compared to workers in other sectors. So this is the major change that we are going to enable in this budget. And when I said, when I quoted from the budget speech that the ratio of foreign to local employees is being removed, we also find at page 33 of the annex, ratio of Mauritian workers to expatriates. The ratio of Mauritian workers to expatriates will be abolished for specific sectors, including construction, manufacturing, agriculture, and SMEs, including bakery operator. This will provide the solution to the number one problem in the agricultural sector. And nous disons, il n'y a pas d'innovation, il y a innovative measures. We will have to implement this very carefully, I reiterate, very carefully, in strict compliance of applicable rules and regulations. This is the number one innovative measure I have highlighted. Number two innovative measure, National Biomass Framework, Mr. Speaker, sir. But National Biomass Framework has been on the table for some time because there was, of course, a lot of work between Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Energy, under the leadership of my honorable colleague, Honorable Lejonga, and also Ministry of Environment, and the National Renewable Biomass Framework, which was announced in last budget, has been approved by government in May of this, last month, in May. This framework elaborates the increased use of biomass for bioelectricity. And it is part of the vision of government to reach the objective of renewable energy mix of 60% by 2030 and phase out the use of coal. Now, of course, to implement the National Biomass Framework, budget measures have been provided for in this budget 2023-2024. The cane sector, I said earlier, I wanted to talk about the NBF, but I have put the NBF in my notes under innovation as opposed to the measures concerning la continuité. National Biomass Framework falls in the category of cane sector because the cane sector will play indeed a major role in achieving this energy mix. And Importantly, in this budget, cane trash and woody biomass will also be remunerated at ₹3.50 per kilowatt-hour, similar to bagasse. Cane trash and woody biomass, Mr. Speaker. The cane industry has now become, I think, an example of circular economy. The word trash doesn't exist in the cane industry. There is nothing called trash. Even bagasse no longer means bagasse. Bagasse in common parlance means something of no value, but bagasse has a value in the cane industry. Cane trash has a value in the cane industry. Tout est utilisé. Circular economy, it is cane industry. But for this to happen, budget measures have to be announced, and it is this government which announced the ₹3.50 for bagasse. And it is this government which is announcing ₹3.50 for cane trash and woody biomass in this year. And on ose dire que ce budget ne contient rien comme innovation. There is a third one, but this one falls outside the ambit of my ministry, but I still wish to highlight it. At the very beginning of his speech, Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Minister of Finance says the following, at page 7, paragraph 57. I quote him, "Indeed, as at end of last year, there were some 522,000 women aged 16 and above. Only 43% of them were part of our labor force." Il annonce déjà la couleur. We have 43% of women aged 16 and above, part of our labor force, but where are the rest? This budget contains a series of measures. It is not for me to expatiate on those measures. I will leave it to my colleague, the Honorable Minister from my own constituency. Et on ose dire que ce budget ne contient rien concernant l'innovation. Il suffit de lire et de comprendre pour trouver les mesures innovantes. I have to take a few minutes to move from agro, c'est une différence de R, from agro to AGO. To AGO. There's only one measure I want to highlight concerning the budget for the judiciary, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is not for, I don't want to speak about the recruitment of judges and magistrates because we always provide for that. Ça, c'est dans la continuité. For this year, the government has announced renovation of the old Supreme Court building. This is a project which is dear to my heart. I am personally following this. This building, Mr. Speaker, sir, is perhaps one of the oldest buildings in Port-Louis, dating back to the French colonial days. In fact, it was not back then a court. It was le Conseil supérieur. That would be where comparable, loosely comparable to this house, where the governor, then governor, would make ordinances, les ordonnances à l'époque française, and then ordinances later. It only later became a courthouse, but it has historic importance. And it is our duty to renovate and maintain this historic building, and there has been this important announcement, similar to the District Court of Flac, which is also a historic building, but this old Supreme Court building in Port-Louis has all its importance, and government is going to provide funds for the renovation. Now, how are we going to do this? I have to explain. We will need expertise, and it is in the intention of government to solicit, and we have already engaged in preliminary discussions with the government of France. Government of France, because of course, for obvious reasons, the building has strong ties with the government of France, dating back to the colonial days. So we will seek their technical assistance in collaboration with Ministry of Arts and Cultural Heritage and National Heritage Fund and technical expertise from abroad in order to renovate this old Supreme Court building. Pour terminer, Monsieur le Président, I end where I started. It is all about, we can go on and on to discuss about the budget, but it is a question of vision and philosophy. As I said, we are implementing our program. We are providing to the people of this country the necessary schemes to help them in the empowerment. I have heard the distinguished speaker before me, my honorable colleague at the bar, honorable Ramphol. J'aimerais lui dire, malheureusement il n'est pas là, c'est un bel effort d'essayer de dire que ce budget n'est pas un bon budget. Pas assez par ici, pas assez là-bas. C'est un bel effort, j'apprécie son discours, mais enfin, c'est tellement un bel effort que j'étais en train de le regarder. Il m'a apparu comme un shadow finance minister du gouvernement Labour. Now, qui va être le finance minister dans cette alliance-là? Je ne sais pas, parce que lui, maintenant, il devient un prétendant. Il devient un prétendant tellement il a fait un très beau discours. Mais ceci dit, après l'avoir entendu, j'aimerais l'accompagner. J'aimerais l'accompagner pour aller faire un tour dehors. D'aller faire un tour dehors pour rencontrer le citoyen. Est-ce que le citoyen pense que ce budget-là n'est pas un bon budget? Nous avons tous, pendant le week-end, nous avons été au bazar, nous avons été dans des fonctions, nous avons rencontré des gens, whether it's at a wedding ceremony, whether we have met people during the weekend. Has anyone heard that this budget is not a good budget? Who has heard this? Now, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, la vision. You speak of supermarket. I don't know whether it's chicken supermarket or another supermarket. No, okay, I appreciate the tone of the debate, it's fine. But it's a question of vision and philosophy. And we have been consistent throughout the years in implementing a socialist budget. You know, during the weekend, we have not only been to supermarket and social events, we have also read a number of these publications, whether it's from, you know, no, c'est un peu plus sérieux. I have one with me. It's coming from KPMG View. You know, I've read this sentence out of KPMG. He says, I quote, the dominance of welfare economics in the philosophy of our minister is, calls you our minister, Honorable Palaj. The dominance of welfare economics in the philosophy of our minister is marked by continued measures around inclusiveness, well-being, and employability of underrepresented groups. End of quote. C'est justement ce qu'on fait. Et c'est pas seulement cette année-ci. Over the years, this question of, I like this term of welfare economics. I don't know whether they are coining something new. It's going to be kishanomics or something like that. But this has been at the core of all the budgets of this government. It's welfare economics. Welfare state has taken a new meaning with this government. Et pour terminer, encore une fois, donne-moi quelques minutes encore, Monsieur le Président. Donc, pour terminer, le budget 2023-2024 traduit et cette philosophie. Et c'est une philosophie et une vision de notre Premier ministre. La vision d'une laboriste moderne, juste et équitable. Et cette vision que nous avons inclus dans tous les budgets de ce gouvernement. Cela découle d'une volonté de faire primer, Monsieur le Président, une justice sociale, chance égale, comme nous avons fait dans les budgets précédents. Aujourd'hui, encore une fois, sous le leadership de notre Premier ministre, nous avons inclus des mesures clés, et ces mesures clés constituent la ligne conductrice de notre action. Sous le leadership de notre Premier ministre, le pays a connu un niveau de développement infrastructurel fulgurant. L'économie s'est démocratisée comme jamais auparavant, permettant création d'emplois et richesse nationale. Nous demeurons aux yeux du monde un exemple à suivre en termes d'ease of doing business, de stabilité économique et politique et de transparence. Bien sûr, nos adversaires ne le reconnaîtront pas. Mais nous avons fait du progrès dans notre République. Ce qui est important de souligner aussi, Monsieur le Président, personne de l'autre côté de la Chambre n'a eu à diriger ce pays pendant une pandémie. Personne. Nous avons eu des premiers ministres et des gouvernements dans le passé. Mais aucun Premier ministre, aucun gouvernement n'a eu à diriger ce pays pendant une pandémie. On oublie quelquefois où est-ce qu'on était en 2020. On oublie. Il n'y avait rien, tout était à l'arrêt. Tout, ce n'est pas seulement ici. Le monde, bateau, avion, fret, tout était à l'arrêt. Et ajouter à cela, juste après la pandémie, le conflit russe-Ukraine, qui perdure d'ailleurs. Donc, ce gouvernement, sous le leadership de notre Premier ministre, nous avons fait preuve d'audace quand il fallait prendre des décisions en faveur de la santé et de la sécurité de nos citoyens. Notre Premier ministre a fait preuve de compassion quand il s'est assuré que durant des moments de grands défis, ceux au bas de l'échelle puissent continuer à vivre décemment. Il a fait preuve de vision quand il a veillé à limiter au maximum les pertes d'emplois injustifiées et à maintenir notre industrie et notre économie en vie. Face à l'adversité, ce gouvernement, sous le leadership du Premier ministre, a surtout su préserver les acquis des Mauriciens tout en protégeant le droit de tout un chacun de continuer à songer à un avenir meilleur. Monsieur le Président, c'est cela le progrès inclusif, dans un esprit de continuité. Inclusiveness, once again, Mr. Speaker. Sir. Now, having said so, before ending, one last sentence. For those who think, I think it was hinted by Honorable Ramphal before, whether this is the last budget. No, it is not the last budget. It is not the last budget. My colleague said at the beginning of his speech, I come before this August Assembly for the fourth and penultimate budget of this mandate. C'est pas the ultimate, c'est one before last. So, we say we have one more budget to go. And I say this to the people, we have continuously provided to the people and we will continue to provide for the people, not only in this budget, but in the forthcoming one as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, I'll suspend the sitting for 30 minutes.